And there we go. We are WFMU East Orange, WMFU Mount Hope, WFMU.org in the middle of a Justin Broadrick special. Straight through this program until 3 p.m. Come on, computer, boot up there. There we go. And to continue with our conversation with Justin Broadrick, please stay tuned. Can you talk a little bit about Pale Sketcher versus Pale Sketches?
Okay,
Amazing.
yeah. The Pale Sketcher project is probably about as far removed from Godflesh as any project I've ever done is, basically, I think. It's closer to Yazoo. I mean, essentially, it's not the first project I've done that is stripped of guitars. That's probably nothing new for me in terms of working in electronic music, but the Pale Sketcher project was basically born from the Yazoo project. The whole concept with Yazoo was for me to take essentially pop songs and my love of pop music and somewhat marry it with my established sound, you know, as in heavy, low-tuned, etc., etc. But I wanted to use that sort of heaviness, that power, to marry it to my own personal take on writing pop music, you know. What I was doing a lot with Yazoo was exploring the electronic side of this. You know, Yazoo is pretty much, it is essentially guitar oriented, but there's a lot of electronics in there as well. And what I found, I was becoming quite eclectic within the whole sphere of Yazoo, examining a lot of the electronica side of the sound more than I probably would have wished. As in, I just couldn't help myself. It's just occurred to me that I really wanted to make music that was just electronic, but had that melancholy and pop edge that Yazoo has, you know. So the idea, the Pale Sketcher project, is a way of me writing similar material to Yazoo, but using only electronic instruments, you know. So, and that's essentially what it is. You know, it's by my hardcore established fan base, it's a lot of people don't get it, basically, and I think that's completely to be understood, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's on a label, Ghostly International, who are known for exploring the ideas of electronica and pop and the bridge between the two, you know. So it's not like I'm out there on my own doing this stuff. I've shifted to a record label which has its own established audience of people who are interested in this context of music, you know.
So you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes.
No, exactly. You know, it's out there for another audience. If my established audience get it, so to speak, then fine. You know, I didn't really expect most of my established hardcore audience to really go for it, you know, because it's a very polite sound in a way, the sound of Pale Sketcher, you know, and that's just something I've wanted to do for a number of years. Most wholeheartedly electronic music that I've done over the years has been brutal, confrontational, psychedelic, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It hasn't been exploring pop and shoegaze and, you know, a lot of these genres that I'm also interested in, you know, and that's what this project does. So for me, it was a given that it would alienate people who like the heavier side of my music. You know?
Right. Oh, but I love that you call it, you know, it's like an exploration in politeness.
Yeah.
How do you do?
That's another side of what I like to do. Yeah, I mean, this is it, you know.
Yeah.
It's still emotionally extreme though, even though it's polite in the context of probably people who, you know, my established audience, or a lot of the records I make, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, for me, emotionally extreme. Its extremities are in the textures, in the vibe, you know, in the mood that's created. But it's just not extreme music per se, you know.
Right. Hey, are you in your studio right now?
Yeah.
Can you just give the listeners a little bit of a scan of, like, where you're sitting and what you've got in there?
Yeah, I'm sitting directly in front of 2 Macintosh screens. I've got the one large screen in front of me, which is running my Mac Pro, and then I've got an older G5 under the table, which with another monitor. One of my projects called Final.
Yeah.
I've actually got in front of me It's a new EP, which I'm only going to release digitally, actually. Which, when you called, I was just doing the sleeve for. So I was doing the sleeve on one Mac and listening to the EP and getting inspiration for the sleeve on the other Mac.
Wow.
But then, to the right of that is my analog mixing desk, which is a TL Audio mixing desk.
Mm-hmm.
And then to the right of that are my racks with all the outboard
processing.
Yeah. To the right of me is all the analog processing stuff. Yeah. And to the left of me is my entire a whole wall full of all my vinyl collection.
Oh, very good.
And then I've got about 4 guitars behind me on the other wall. Not attached to the wall, they're all bunched up together. I've got a 5-string bass there, that's my 7-string Schecter, and one of my latest purchases, which is an 8-string Schecter.
What's the star of the studio?
I have a different star every couple of months, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not as in I buy another piece, but just I'll be doing a lot of work and it's suddenly oriented around something I've vibed off on a piece of equipment, you know. I mean, I'm still sitting here with my old Eventide 3500, you know, the old Eventide, you know, one of the classiest multi-effects processors on the market.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I mean, Godflesh, we bought that in about 94. I'm still finding stuff in it now, you know.
Wow.
I shelved it for a bit because I was doing a lot of stuff internally on the computers, you know, for a while, but I found that I wasn't being... in hindsight, wasn't satisfied with the sound. I've gone back to a lot of my analog equipment in the last year and a half, and now I feel I've got, you know, as close to a perfect studio setup as I imagined, you know, where I've now pieced... It's a perfect marriage of analog equipment, valve, tube equipment, and high-end Macintosh software processing as well, you know, and I've found that the best world is the marriage of both, you know, whereas I've used both exclusively in my career, you know.
I wanted to see if there was just something that you kept on going to, or if it was more like you had like the employee of the month. Oh, this is my favorite piece now. And in writing, is it sort of you end up working with one mode for a little bit and let it expand?
Yeah, that can be true. It depends again on the context. It's like with Yazoo, for example. That is very much born of me sitting there acoustically with a guitar, you know. It can also be inspired by something else, though, which, you know, would generally be some older band's melodies, which I may try and perversely recreate, but on a low-tuned guitar, you know. I think one of the last songs I wrote for the new Yazoo album, I think I was going back to one of my old favourite bands, which is Big Star, and I think I think I rebought one of their albums on vinyl and suddenly come up with recreating one of their melodies as a Yazoo song, but I reversed the melody and then transposed it onto to an 8-string Schecter guitar, so it's about 10 times lower than the Big Star original, you know what I mean? So that, I mean, that's, you know, but I wrote that acoustically. I'm sitting there with an 8-string Schecter guitar, but I'm playing acoustically and singing, trying my best to sing anyway. But, you know, sometimes things will be born of literally a couple of pieces of equipment. Whereas with Yazoo, of course, I'll write it acoustically, etc., etc. But then by the time it hits the proper recording process, it then does become very much about texture, and it does become some of its processing, you know. A lot of what I do is sound, it is production, it isn't just trying to record a song, you know, I guess, you know, quite obviously I'm quite obsessive about production, chiefly because I feel I never get it right, so I'm always trying to chase this utopian dream of production which I can never seem to reach, you know, so that's my goal really, is to keep trying my hardest to achieve a sound that's in my head, which I can never get down.
And but so then when do you stop? I mean, well, why aren't you still writing the same song for, 20 years?
Yeah, to be honest, I just, I quite often cut off. I've just learned self-discipline, which is pretty hard as a musician anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
well, especially as a studio musician, and you don't always work with other people.
Exactly. A lot of what I do is solo.
Yeah.
Even Yazoo is, essentially it is solo. So I have to just work with myself and argue with myself on a minute-to-minute basis, It's schizophrenic, and I clearly am schizophrenic. So it's like, and obviously I do sit in the studio arguing with myself.
the angel devil, like one on one shoulder, one on the other.
Yeah. There's probably a few others in there as well.
Right.
You know, it's yeah. I mean, it's crazy, really. I mean, if there was just a recorder in the studio that just recorded literally what's happening in my studio, then, you know, it'd probably be quite scary to some people, I think. A few voices going on, put it that way.
Well, we would probably have to thank all of those voices then for all of your creation time.